The aurochs, the ancient bull of the Nile. Long before the domesticated cow grazed Egypt's fields, there was the aurochs, the colossal wild ancestor of all modern cattle. Standing over 6 feet tall at the shoulder with horns as long as a man's arm, this was no barnyard creature. It was power on hooves, the living symbol of fertility, strength, and chaos. Early Egyptians carved its image into tombs, painted it in hunting scenes, and even made it a divine emblem. The aurochs' wild nature embodied the raw, untamed side of the Nile, the side people prayed both to and against. But here's the thing. The aurochs wasn't just another animal in Egyptian life. It was woven into its mythology. The bull-headed gods like Apis and Bukis were believed to carry the spirit of the aurochs, representing virility and connection to the afterlife. Pharaohs even identified with them, adopting bull imagery as a metaphor for dominance. You could say the aurochs was the original national mascot of power. Yet, despite its might, humans did what humans do best. We tamed it, then hunted it to extinction. By around 1200 BCE, aurochs had vanished from Egypt, retreating northward before disappearing from the world entirely by the 1600s. The species survived long enough to shape our mythology, our cattle, and even our diets. Today, when you look at a cow chewing lazily in a field, remember that its ancestor once thundered across Egypt's floodplains, an animal so fierce that even pharaohs worshipped its shadow. Evolution might have domesticated the bull, but the aurochs was pure, primal Nile energy, gone now, but still echoing in every horn and hieroglyph. Hippopotamus amphibius, the river monster of Ra. The hippopotamus may still exist elsewhere today, but the ones that stalked ancient Egypt's Nile are long gone. These weren't cartoonish, docile hippos. They were enormous, aggressive behemoths that terrified farmers and fascinated priests. Hippos were among the largest animals in North Africa, weighing up to 4 tons, and they ruled the riverbanks. Egyptians knew them as both sacred and deadly, creatures of chaos tied to the god Set, the bringer of storms and disorder. Yet, paradoxically, the hippo also symbolized fertility and protection. The goddess Taweret, depicted as a pregnant hippo with a crocodile's tail, guarded women during childbirth. Egyptians both feared and worshipped the same beast, a theme that sums up their relationship with nature. Duality. Hippos once thrived across the Nile Delta, their snorts echoing through the papyrus at night. They were hunted not just for meat, but for prestige. Killing a hippo was considered an act of heroism, often immortalized in temple carvings. Pharaohs even staged hippo hunts to show divine authority. But by around 1000 BCE, after centuries of expansion, agriculture, and relentless hunting, the Nile's hippos vanished. Ironically, Egypt's identity, its gods, art, and ecology, was shaped by an animal it ultimately drove out. The hippopotamus amphibius Niloticus became a ghost of the Nile, remembered only in hieroglyphs and myth. Modern hippos in sub-Saharan Africa may look the same, but the Egyptian hippo was something else entirely. A living contradiction, sacred and savage, mother and monster. All right, I will be posting more videos here, so slam that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. This helps us to rank better in the YouTube algorithm. The goose, the lost bird of the pharaohs. Carved on tomb walls and painted in vivid ochre and turquoise, the goose, also called the Egyptian goose, was once one of the most common birds along the Nile. But the specific subspecies seen by ancient Egyptians, wild, fierce, and majestic, has long since disappeared. It's a haunting reminder that even the most ordinary creatures in art can vanish quietly from real life. The goose wasn't just food, it was a symbol of the soul's journey. Geese featured prominently in Egyptian religion, connected to the creation god Geb and even the birth of the sun itself. The Great Cackler, a sacred goose deity, was believed to have laid the cosmic egg that birthed the sun god Ra. That's right. For ancient Egyptians, the universe literally began with a goose. They domesticated versions for temples and offerings, but wild miam flocks were prized for their beauty. Ancient hunters depicted them in tombs with delicate precision, showing the birds in mid-flight with colored feathers that rivaled peacocks. The most famous depiction, found in the tomb of Nefermat, is so lifelike that modern ornithologists debated whether it showed an extinct species. And here's where it gets weird. Genetic studies suggest that the exact Meum goose seen by Egyptians may represent a now lost lineage. It's a creature immortalized in art, but erased from existence. While modern Egyptian geese still wade through Africa's wetlands, the bird the pharaohs saw has likely been gone for millennia, a quiet casualty of changing climate and habitat loss. So next time you see a goose honking near a pond, remember, to ancient Egyptians, that bird wasn't just an annoyance, it was creation itself, the feathered echo of the first sunrise. The Bennu heron, the bird that became a god. If the phoenix ever had a real ancestor, it was the Bennu heron, the bird of rebirth and flame that inspired Egypt's most powerful myth. Described as a majestic heron with shimmering red and gold plumage, the Bennu was said to perch on the sacred willow tree at Heliopolis, where it sang the first song at the dawn of creation. But here's the twist. The Bennu wasn't just a myth. It was likely based on a real bird, a now extinct subspecies of the gray heron, or perhaps a massive regal stork that once stalked Egypt's wetlands. The resemblance was uncanny enough that the Greeks later adopted it as the phoenix. In Egyptian belief, the Bennu represented the Bia, the soul, of Ra, the sun god. Every morning it was reborn with the sunrise, symbolizing renewal and immortality. Archaeological evidence shows Bennu imagery everywhere, carved on sarcophagi, painted on temple walls, and placed in tombs as a symbol of eternal life. It was the celestial heron that bridged life, death, and rebirth. But as Egypt's climate dried and the Nile's floodplains shrank, the wetlands that sustained these great birds disappeared. By the time the Greek and Roman empires rose, the Bennu's living counterpart was gone, existing only as divine metaphor. The irony is perfect, a bird that symbolized resurrection when extinct. Yet, in a way, it fulfilled its myth. The Bennu lives not in feathers, but in every story of the phoenix, every sunrise rebirth, every flame that refuses to die. Egypt saw it first, and the rest of the world is still chasing its shadow. Baboons, the sacred thieves of the sun. Baboons aren't extinct globally, but the species and subspecies that once lived in Egypt are. Ancient Egyptians saw them not as monkeys, but as holy beings, companions of Thoth, the god of wisdom, writing, and the moon. Baboons appear everywhere in Egyptian art, sitting upright like scribes, raising their hands to greet the morning sun. In some temples, they're literally shown worshipping Ra. But there's another side to this story. The real baboons were mischievous, noisy, and sometimes violent. Herodotus wrote about Egyptians keeping them as sacred temple animals, where they were fed fruit and worshipped like priests. Archaeological digs have uncovered baboon mummies, wrapped with the same reverence as humans. Yet genetic studies show that these were likely Papio-hamadryas, a species now extinct in Egypt, once roaming freely along the Red Sea hills. So what happened? Overhunting, habitat loss, and the changing desert climate drove them south. By the New Kingdom era, around 1200 BCE, baboons existed only in captivity, imported from Nubia. But their divine reputation never faded. Egyptians believed baboons helped ferry souls into the afterlife, shrieking as they greeted the dawn, the same sound that once echoed from the cliffs of the eastern desert. Today, baboons still thrive in Africa, but not in the land that deified them. In Egypt, the god of wisdom's furry emissary is long gone, its descendants watching the sunrise somewhere far from the Nile. North African elephants, the war machines that vanished. Before elephants became symbols of African savannas, there was a smaller, stockier breed that lived across North Africa, the North African elephant. These creatures roamed Egypt, Libya, and Sudan thousands of years ago, grazing near the Nile's lush floodplains. Pharaohs knew them. Carvings from pre-dynastic Egypt show elephants alongside crocodiles and giraffes, proof that the Sahara was once green, alive, and full of giants. But these weren't just ordinary elephants. They were later used by Carthaginian generals like Hannibal to cross the Alps. That same species once thundered through ancient Egypt's wetlands. They were smaller than modern African elephants, but smarter, quicker, and adapted to heat. By the time of the New Kingdom, though, the elephants were already disappearing. Overhunting, deforestation, and desert expansion wiped them out north of the Sudanese border. Egyptians revered them in myth, associating them with strength and cosmic power. But ironically, their bones ended up as ivory trinkets. The extinction of the North African elephant wasn't just ecological, it was symbolic. Egypt lost one of its largest land mammals, and the Sahara lost its balance. The deserts grew, the forests receded, and the giants faded into memory. Today, the only trace left are carvings on temple walls, a faint echo of a time when the Nile Valley was home to titans. The Barbary lion, the pharaoh's forgotten king. Before lions roamed in safaris, they prowled Egypt's deserts. Massive, golden-maned Barbary lions, the largest lion subspecies ever recorded. They were apex predators, with males weighing over 500 pounds and manes so thick they looked like living suns. These lions weren't just animals to Egyptians, they were living gods. The lioness symbolized war and divine wrath through Sekhmet, the goddess who could both destroy and heal. Pharaohs hunted lions not just for sport, but as a demonstration of cosmic dominance, proof they could subdue chaos itself. But over time, Egypt's lions vanished. First, the fertile grasslands shrank. Then the prey disappeared. Finally, humans finished the job. By the late period, around 500 BCE, wild lions were gone from the Nile Valley. Later, rulers imported them from Nubia and Libya just to keep the royal hunts going. Barbary lions survived longer in North Africa's Atlas Mountains, the same subspecies that inspired Roman gladiatorial lions. But even they were declared extinct in the wild by the 1960s. The Egyptians, though, never forgot. Lions appeared on royal thrones, temple walls, and even as guardian statues. The Sphinx itself likely inspired by the fusion of lion and king. The Barbary lion broke no evolutionary rules. It just became too majestic for its shrinking world. Its extinction marks the end of an age when Egypt's deserts roared. If you've watched to this point, slam that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. This helps us to rank better in the YouTube algorithm.